People don't fall in love with what you give them. They fall in love with what awakens inside them when they're with you. This might seem strange at first, especially in a world that values giving, doing, pleasing, and achieving. But pause for a moment. Look beneath the surface of every deep connection you've ever felt. You will find this unspoken truth. It wasn't their money, their status, or even their words that touched you. It was how you felt around them. It was who you became in their presence. Calmer, safer, more yourself. This is the unspoken energy that shapes relationships, not always seen, but always felt. And this energy begins, not with them, but with you. So today we journey inward, not to impress, not to chase, but to understand the two real reasons why people fall in love, and how your own clarity, stillness, and energy determine the depth of that love, far more than your actions or your words. Let's begin not by asking, how can I make someone love me? But instead, what is it within me that others experience when I'm silently present? When a person enters a room, long before a single word is spoken, something has already been communicated. It's not the clothing, not the posture, not even the facial expression that carries the deepest message, though those are often noticed first. What truly speaks is the state of being that person radiates. There is something beneath all of that. An atmosphere, a subtle field, a silent tone. This presence either invites or repels, calms or agitates, attracts or leaves us untouched. People fall in love not with the surface of who we are, but with the invisible language of our presence. Presence is not taught in school. No one hands us a curriculum in how to become rooted, regulated, and silently radiant. Yet, in relationships, romantic or otherwise, this is the very quality that defines whether someone feels safe enough to open up, to trust, to connect. When two nervous systems meet, they engage in a dance, a subconscious dialogue that most are unaware of. But this dialogue determines everything. Your tone of voice, your breathing pattern, your eye contact, or lack of it. Communicate your internal world. If your inner world is chaotic, others feel it. If it's grounded, others relax into it. Let's consider a story of a woman named Rena. She was in her 50s, newly divorced, and carried a quiet sadness despite her attempts to appear cheerful. Every time she met someone new, she tried hard to impress through conversation, her appearance, her generosity, and yet people seemed to drift away, uninterested or unsure. It wasn't until she began to meditate, to sit with her own discomfort, to regulate her breath and notice the patterns of tension in her body, that something began to shift. She didn't change her hairstyle, her wardrobe, or her social habits, but she became still. And in that stillness, a deeper warmth emerged. People began to linger when speaking with her. They listened more carefully, even shared more. Eventually, someone she met at a community gardening event confessed, "I don't know why, but I feel calm when I'm near you. I feel like I can just be myself." That is presence. That is what people truly fall in love with. Not a persona, but a state of being that makes them feel whole. Scientific studies in neuroscience support this. The vagus nerve, part of the parasympathetic nervous system, responds to cues of safety or threat in our environment. The tone of someone's voice, their breathing rhythm, the softening around the eyes, all of these can signal safety. When someone is regulated, grounded, and emotionally safe, our vagus nerve responds by downshifting from a survival state into a state of connection. We begin to feel at ease. The body knows long before the mind catches up. This is why so many people unknowingly repel connection despite their efforts. You can say all the right things, behave politely, offer gifts or words of affection. But if the body beneath those actions is tense, guarded, or unsettled, the message is incongruent. People feel confused. They feel something doesn't align, even if they can't explain why. They don't fall in love with the outer gestures. They fall in love with the feeling your presence creates within them. That feeling of emotional safety is more powerful than words. It's not about performing stillness. It's about becoming still. Not as a tactic to attract others, but as a natural byproduct of attending to your own nervous system. The more you anchor yourself in the body, in the breath, in the now, the more you offer others a sanctuary in your presence. This is not manipulation. It is alignment. In a world dominated by doing, presence is a radical form of being. And ironically, it is this being that does the deepest work in others. When people say, "There's just something about him," or "I feel different when I'm around her," they are speaking to presence. It's invisible, but undeniable. And it arises not through effort, but through surrender to your own inner life. We live in an age where many chase attraction through enhancement, more beauty, more charm, more accomplishment. But attraction sustained over time is not based on adrenaline or appearance. It's based on how someone feels in your presence over time. Is it ease or anxiety? Is it expansion or contraction? This is something no makeup, no wealth, no cleverness can replace. The irony is that many people chase connection externally when the key is to build internal coherence. Coherence means that your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions are aligned. You are not pretending. You are not performing. You are resting in who you are, and the more coherent you are inside, the more resonance others feel around you. It's like striking a tuning fork. If you are clear, others will harmonize to your frequency. Let's take the example of a man named Asif. He was always charming in conversations, quick-witted, expressive, but relationships never lasted. When he began working with breathwork and journaling, he realized he carried a deep pattern of anxiety, an inner speed that drove him to constantly entertain, impress, and avoid silence. Through months of inner stillness practices, he became less reactive, more attuned. During a date, instead of rushing to fill silence, he simply sat, breathing, making gentle eye contact. His date later told him, "You didn't try to fix anything. You just listened. It was the first time I didn't feel judged." That is the power of presence, not as performance, but as embodiment. And now, flowing from this foundation of presence, we arrive at the next realization, that people are not drawn to your emotions in their raw form, but to how you hold them. Emotional self-mastery is not about repression. It's not about being stoic and unreadable. It's about how you manage the movement of energy within you. Because that's what emotion is, energy in motion. People fall in love with someone who can feel deeply but remain stable. It gives them safety and inspiration at the same time. When someone can face their own fear without projecting it onto you, it builds trust. When someone can hold grief with grace, it creates space for authenticity. Emotional self-mastery is attractive not because it's about control, but because it offers others a container for their own messy, uncertain feelings. Modern psychology and neuroscience show that people naturally co-regulate. Our brains and nervous systems sync up with those around us. This is most evident in close relationships. If you are dysregulated, overwhelmed, reactive, panicked, it's likely your partner will also become dysregulated. But if you can hold your center, breathe through difficulty, and remain grounded, you invite them into coherence. You don't need to say, "Calm down." Your energy will say it for you. A study conducted at the HeartMath Institute demonstrated that the electromagnetic field of the human heart extends several feet beyond the body and influences others' physiological state. A calm heart emits a measurable signal that affects those nearby. This means your emotional self-regulation isn't just a private act. It is relational. The way you breathe affects how others breathe. The way you carry stress or peace affects the field around you. Let's return to our earlier story, but now through the lens of emotional self-mastery. Rina, after developing her practice of presence, noticed something remarkable. She no longer panicked when someone didn't respond to her text. She didn't spiral into self-doubt or attempt to win attention. Instead, she observed her emotional reaction, let it pass through her, and stayed with her breath. This created a shift in her relationships. She no longer brought a needy energy. Instead, she brought a stable one, and that stability became a rare treasure, something others gravitated toward, even if they couldn't name it. It's easy to mistake emotional self-mastery for coldness. But the truth is the opposite. It's the foundation for true warmth. Without it, we give affection to manipulate, to earn love, or to soothe our own discomfort. But when we are emotionally anchored, we can give freely, without expectation, without control. That kind of love is powerful. It is not a love that says, I need you. It is a love that says, I am whole, and I offer you a safe place to unfold. Children intuitively seek out emotionally regulated adults, not because they understand psychology, but because they feel it. In fact, most of our earliest attachments were formed not through words, but through nervous system co-regulation. A child learns to feel safe when the caregiver is stable, present, and emotionally attuned. That same instinct carries into adulthood. We are all children, in some way looking for a safe place to rest. So emotional self-mastery is not just a personal achievement. It is a gift you offer others. A calm nervous system is an act of generosity. A deep breath taken in the middle of a conflict is an offering of peace. The ability to witness your own anger without unleashing it on another is an act of love. And yet this level of mastery does not arise by accident. It requires practice, deliberate, compassionate, consistent practice. You cannot access emotional clarity in the heat of conflict unless you've practiced it in stillness. It begins in the mundane, noticing your breath in traffic, softening your body in long lines, observing the surge of irritation without acting on it. Every moment becomes a dojo, a training ground for grace. Over time, these micro moments build a kind of inner power, not power over others, but power over yourself. The power to choose your response, the power to withhold blame and offer presence, the power to feel without drowning. And it is this power, not dominance, not control, but compassionate discipline, that makes you deeply attractive. Because in truth, people don't want perfection. They want presence. They don't need you to never get angry. They need you to not lose yourself in your anger. They don't expect you to be invulnerable. They just want to feel safe in your vulnerability. That safety, that steadiness, that grounded strength, that is what invites true connection. That is what people fall in love with. And when your presence is calm and your emotions are held with grace, something even deeper begins to emerge, a silent magnetism that requires no effort. It is not forced, it is felt, and it becomes the doorway through which deeper love can enter. There is a moment when a person stops pretending and something remarkable happens. A kind of lightness enters their voice. Their body relaxes. Their eyes no longer scan the room for approval. And in that stillness, what emerges is not a role, not a mask, but something much more magnetic. Authenticity. People fall in love with this. Not the version of you curated for admiration, but the version of you that is quietly aligned with who you really are. But to reach that place requires something most people avoid: inner stillness. In a world built on performance, stillness is radical. We are taught to present ourselves strategically, to say the right things, to wear the right clothes, to adopt the right opinions, to keep up with expectations that shift like sand. But in doing so, we create a disconnect, not just from others, but from ourselves. We begin to lose touch with what is real in us. And the more we lose that, the more we rely on performance to gain connection. But performance-based connection never satisfies because it requires constant maintenance. Authenticity, on the other hand, requires no maintenance, only presence. But presence cannot exist in a mind that is always busy, comparing, analyzing, defending. It requires stillness, silence, and solitude. It requires the courage to be with yourself without distraction, to feel what arises when you stop running, and to sit with it long enough for clarity to emerge. Authenticity is not built through external affirmation. It is revealed through internal observation. Consider the story of a man named Julian. For years, he crafted himself into the image of someone successful. Always polished, articulate, agreeable. He knew how to navigate social settings with precision, but privately, he felt exhausted, disconnected, and vaguely hollow. He sensed that people liked him, but didn't truly know him. One evening, at a retreat, he was invited to sit alone under a tree for an hour, in silence. He resisted at first, but as the minutes stretched into stillness, something softened. He realized how many layers he'd been wearing, how deeply he feared being seen without them. And in that stillness, something real surfaced, a sense of grounded clarity. That clarity felt more alive than anything he had performed before. When he returned to his relationships, he noticed a shift. He spoke slower. He listened more. He shared not what he thought people wanted to hear, but what was honestly alive in him. People leaned in, not away. They felt the difference even if they couldn't explain it. That was the power of authenticity. There's a principle in Eastern thought called Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action or non-forcing. It speaks to a way of being that flows from alignment, not effort. When you are in Wu Wei, you're not pushing against life or people. You're moving with clarity from the center of who you are. That's what authenticity feels like to others. It's not loud. It's not showy. It's quiet, but undeniable. It doesn't demand attention, but it draws it. When someone meets you and senses you are not trying to be someone else, they unconsciously relax. You're not manipulating them. You're not measuring their reactions. You're just present. This gives them permission to also be themselves. And that mutual presence is what creates intimacy. Not through strategy, but through surrender. Authenticity also creates emotional consistency. If you are pretending, your emotional state will be erratic, sometimes confident, sometimes insecure, depending on external feedback. But when you are anchored in your truth, your emotional field is stable. Others feel safe in that consistency. They know what to expect. They don't have to decode mixed signals. They don't have to wonder if the version of you today will match the one they met yesterday. The reason so many people struggle in relationships is because they have not yet found themselves. And so the version they bring into connection is unstable. You cannot expect someone to love the real you if you are still hiding it, even from yourself. That is why solitude, far from being a luxury, is a necessity. You have to know who you are without others in order to bring something real to them. Authenticity is not about exposing every wound or sharing every thought. It's not rawness without refinement. It's about alignment. When your inner world and outer expression mirror each other, when there's no gap between your heart and your behavior. That gap is what people feel when something seems off. But when there's no gap, there is resonance. That resonance is what we fall in love with. Let's look at this from another angle. Imagine someone speaking to you, but everything they say feels scripted. There's no depth, no risk, no real presence. Now imagine someone else speaking from the heart, maybe even pausing to find the right words. Their voice might tremble slightly, but it lands differently. You feel it in your body. That's authenticity. It's not polished, but it's powerful. Authenticity requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires courage. But that courage is magnetic. It tells others, I am safe with myself, and so I can be safe with you. And safety is the foundation of love. Not excitement, not attraction, but emotional safety. That's what allows love to deepen beyond the surface. Authenticity also clarifies what kind of connections are real. When you show up as you truly are, some people will leave. Let them. Their leaving makes space for those who resonate with your truth, not your performance. You don't need everyone to love you. You need the right people to see you. And that only happens when you are willing to be seen without the costume. Now, flowing from the power of authenticity, we arrive at something more nuanced. The two reasons people fall in love. These two reasons are not superficial. They are deeply rooted in our biology, psychology, and emotional reality. And yet, they are often misunderstood. The first reason someone falls in love with you is because of how they feel about themselves in your presence. This is not about flattery or praise. It's about the emotional mirror you hold up. When someone is with you, do they feel seen? Do they feel intelligent, capable, safe? Do they feel more alive, more calm, more inspired? If so, they will associate those feelings with you. And love will begin to grow. Not because you gave them something, but because you awakened something in them. This is the paradox of love. It feels like we fall in love with someone else, but really, we fall in love with how we feel in their presence. If your presence brings peace, they feel peace. If it brings anxiety, they feel anxiety. People return to the relationships that reflect the state they desire to inhabit. So the question becomes, what emotional climate do you generate? Neuroscience supports this through the concept of mirror neurons, cells in the brain that reflect the emotional states of those around us. If you are grounded and open-hearted, others begin to mirror that. They may not know why they feel better around you, but they do. Their body responds before their mind understands. And once the body feels safe and nourished, the mind creates a story called love. Consider a woman named Isla who had always tried to impress others with her accomplishments. But the relationships never lasted. She began to study not what she said, but how people felt when they were with her. She noticed that in her effort to appear perfect, others felt inadequate or guarded. So she softened. She stopped performing and started listening more. She allowed herself to be seen in her imperfection. And something shifted. People began to feel more relaxed around her. They shared more. One man told her, "When I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe." That was the beginning of real love. Not because she became someone new, but because she allowed others to feel like themselves. The second reason someone falls in love with you is because of who they believe they can become with you. This is the realm of shared vision, possibility, and growth. We don't just fall in love with the present moment. We fall in love with the future we imagine with someone. And if your presence inspires someone to rise, to evolve, to move closer to who they want to become, love takes root. This is not about fixing them or coaching them. It's about the energetic influence you carry. When your presence is grounded in growth, you naturally invite others to grow. When you live in integrity, you call others into their own. This kind of relationship is not transactional. It's transformational. You don't love someone because they complete you. You love them because they reflect the part of you that is becoming more whole. Let's revisit Julian. After shedding his performance mask and stepping into authenticity, he entered a relationship that felt different. There was mutual encouragement. They shared their goals, fears, and dreams not as strategy, but as truth. His partner once said to him, "When I'm with you, I feel like I can become the person I've always wanted to be." That's not flattery, that's resonance. That's the essence of transformative love. When someone sees you as a partner in their evolution, not as a savior, but as a companion, they invest emotionally. The relationship becomes a vessel for mutual expansion. This is where love deepens beyond chemistry and attraction. It becomes a spiritual path. So the real question is, who becomes possible in your presence? Do you lift others with your clarity, your stillness, your integrity? Do you reflect back their highest potential, not through pressure, but through example? That is what people fall in love with. Not the decoration of your life, but the direction of your energy. Not the mask you wear, but the mirror you offer. When someone feels emotionally safe with you and sees themselves becoming more of who they are meant to be, they don't just love you, they trust you. And trust is the rarest form of intimacy. It is the soil in which love grows roots. Without it, love withers, no matter how passionate the beginning. And trust is not given by chance. It is built through your emotional presence, your authenticity, your clarity of being. These are not external traits, they are inner practices. Practices that turn you into someone whose presence is both a sanctuary and a spark. So the deeper invitation is not to seek love, but to become someone through whom love naturally flows. Someone in whose presence others feel both deeply accepted and subtly awakened. Because love is not something you create through force. It is something that arises when presence meets potential. And both are held with care. There is a truth that escapes many people as they move from one relationship to another, searching for something better, more fulfilling, more harmonious. Your relationships cannot be more peaceful than your inner world. What you carry within yourself leaks into every connection you make, often without words, often without conscious intent. It shows up in your tone, in your reactions, in the way your body holds tension, in how you speak during conflict, and especially in how you respond to silence. Peace is not found in another person. Peace is brought to another person, or not at all. A person can say all the right things, use affirming language, and show gestures of love, but if their nervous system is vibrating with unresolved tension or unprocessed emotion, the energy underneath betrays the performance. You can sense it. There is something that feels unsettled. You may not know exactly what it is, but your body knows. The human nervous system is highly attuned to subtle cues of threat and safety, even without conscious thought. This is why people feel drained around someone who is always anxious, or guarded around someone who is internally agitated, even if that person seems friendly on the surface. Inner peace, in this way, is not just a personal achievement, it becomes a relational offering. Your ability to bring stillness, clarity, and softness to a shared space determines the depth of connection you are capable of creating. Two people cannot build a calm, trusting bond if one or both are constantly in survival mode, mentally scattered, or emotionally chaotic. Connection is an energetic bridge, and if the bridge is made from tension, distrust, or fear, it will eventually collapse under the weight of vulnerability. A woman named Lena once described her relationship with her partner as walking on glass. Everything looked perfect from the outside. Vacations, polite dinners, shared social events. But inside their home, silence was a weapon. Words were measured. Affection was conditional. There was no open conflict, but also no rest. Lena eventually realized that the unease she felt around her partner wasn't about what was said. It was about what was not being said. There was no peace, only performance. And performance creates pressure. That pressure, over time, wore away at her sense of safety. Love became something she performed to, until she felt more like a co-star than a companion. What had happened was not unique. Lena's partner had never cultivated peace within himself. His internal world was filled with comparison, resentment, and fear of inadequacy. So he compensated through control, trying to regulate his discomfort by managing her. But control is not peace. It is the illusion of safety. Eventually, that illusion falls apart. You cannot expect peaceful relationships when you are waging a war within yourself. If your thoughts are hostile, if your inner voice is critical, if you are constantly trying to outrun your own emotions, then no matter how gentle your words may sound, your energy will carry that unrest into every interaction. Relationships mirror the state of your inner life. The more agitated you are within, the more reactive you become without. The more unresolved pain you carry, the more easily you are triggered. The more judgment you have toward yourself, the more you find fault in others. But when peace becomes your internal baseline, everything begins to shift. You stop needing others to behave a certain way in order for you to feel okay. You stop reacting defensively because you no longer feel threatened by differing opinions or unexpected emotions. You begin to listen more, speak less, and in that space between stimulus and response, trust begins to grow. Peace creates room, and room is what relationships need in order to breathe. Peace, however, is not passivity. It does not mean you tolerate disrespect or avoid hard conversations. In fact, real peace allows you to engage with discomfort skillfully. It allows you to express boundaries without aggression, to share pain without blame, and to remain centered even when the other person is not. This is emotional maturity, and it arises directly from a stable inner world. Emotional maturity means you no longer seek to control others in order to avoid discomfort. You are able to sit with the tension of disagreement, the awkwardness of unresolved emotion, the vulnerability of not knowing. You do not run from these things because they no longer destabilize you. You are grounded not in control, but in presence. And presence is the foundation of peace. This presence can only be cultivated when you turn inward consistently, not just when things go wrong, but as a way of life. It means spending time in silence, watching your thoughts without clinging to them, allowing emotions to rise and fall without being swept away. It means listening to your breath, not to fix it, but to remember that you are here. These practices are not exotic. They are simple, but powerful. They are what return you to the eye of the storm. There is a reason ancient traditions emphasized stillness as the path to wisdom. Stillness doesn't eliminate difficulty. It simply gives you the clarity to respond wisely. When your mind is still, you can see clearly. When your emotions are settled, you can speak truth without causing harm. When your body is relaxed, others feel safe around you. This is the physiology of connection. Studies in psychoneuroimmunology have shown that chronic emotional stress not only affects your immune system, but also reduces your ability to connect and attune to others. Stress creates a tunnel vision. It limits your capacity for empathy, patience, and perspective. But when your nervous system is regulated, when your internal state is calm, you become more emotionally available. Your presence expands. And in that expansion, others feel seen, heard, and held. A man named Elias, after years of therapy and mindfulness training, described this shift in his own relationship. He said, "Before, when my partner was upset, I used to get defensive. I tried to fix it quickly or argue my point. Now I just breathe. I listen. I don't rush to respond. And 9 times out of 10, what she really needed wasn't a solution. She needed space to feel what she was feeling. Once I gave her that space, she relaxed. And so did I." Elias didn't become peaceful through intellectual understanding. He became peaceful through embodied practice. and his relationship began to heal. Not because problems disappeared, but because he no longer poured gasoline on the fire. Inner peace also transforms how we handle silence in relationships. For many, silence is unbearable. It's filled with imagined rejection, unspoken accusations, or awkward distance. But silence, when held with presence, becomes a container. It allows things to unfold naturally, without force. It becomes a sacred pause, a space in which emotions can settle and clarity can emerge. A relationship that can hold silence without fear is a relationship anchored in peace. The fear of silence often comes from the fear of being alone with oneself. If you are uncomfortable in your own presence, you will always seek others to distract you from that discomfort. But relationships are not meant to save you from yourself. They are meant to reflect the work you have done with yourself. If you enter a relationship needing someone to rescue you from your own inner noise, that dependency becomes a form of pressure. And pressure, over time, erodes love. But when you learn to sit with yourself, not to escape, but to listen, you build a kind of strength that no one can give you. That strength becomes the foundation of how you relate to others. You no longer cling. You no longer chase. You no longer collapse under the weight of misunderstanding. You can remain open even when others close. You can remain clear even when others are confused. This steadiness is not coldness. It is the warmth of someone who is no longer at war with life. From this place, forgiveness becomes easier. Patience becomes natural. Gratitude becomes a daily rhythm, not just a concept. And love becomes less about need and more about offering. You begin to give not because you are empty and seeking to be filled, but because you are full and seeking to share. That fullness cannot be faked. It must be cultivated. Consider the analogy of a lake. When the waters are turbulent, you can't see anything beneath the surface. Everything is distorted. But when the waters are still, the reflection becomes clear. Relationships work the same way. If your inner waters are always disturbed, your perception of others will be distorted by your own noise. You will project your fears, your past, your insecurities. But when you are still, you see the other as they are, not as you fear them to be. This clarity doesn't mean you become perfect or immune to emotion. It means that emotion no longer owns you. You can experience sadness without collapsing, anger without exploding, fear without fleeing. You become the container, not the contents. And because you can hold your own emotions, you can also hold the emotions of others. That holding creates trust, and trust creates intimacy. Intimacy is not built through constant togetherness or dramatic gestures. It is built through repeated moments of shared presence. Moments when both people feel safe enough to let down their guard. Moments when there is no need to impress or protect. These moments cannot be scheduled. They arise naturally when peace is present. Peace also changes the way we experience conflict. Instead of trying to win, you listen. Instead of proving your point, you seek understanding. Instead of escalating, you breathe. Conflict becomes less about who's right and more about what's real. And what's real is often hidden beneath layers of defensiveness. Peace makes it safe for those layers to fall away. The greatest power you have in any relationship is not to change the other person, but to embody the quality of presence that invites change. When you stop reacting and start responding from a place of stillness, you shift the entire dynamic. You show through your energy that there is another way to be, not by preaching, but by presence. This kind of presence doesn't require dramatic change. It requires consistent practice. It means waking up a little earlier to sit in silence. It means pausing before you speak. It means noticing when you're holding your breath and softening. It means choosing rest over reactivity. Over time, these small choices create a big difference, not just in you, but in every relationship you touch. Because in the end, peace is not something you find in the world. It is something you become. And when you become peace, you become the kind of person others feel at home with. Not because you've solved all their problems, but because your presence reminds them that they are safe, seen, and free to be themselves. And in that freedom, love grows, not through force, but through quiet invitation. There is an invisible thread that runs through every relationship we build. An unseen force that binds, strengthens, or slowly frays the connection we share with others. That thread is attention. What you give your attention to, you give your life to. And in the realm of human relationships, your attention is either a bridge that deepens intimacy or a wall that fosters distance. When we speak about connection, it is easy to think of grand expressions of love, profound moments of vulnerability, or sweeping romantic gestures. But in truth, what nourishes a relationship the most is something much quieter, the consistent, sincere discipline of attention. Discipline may not sound romantic, but without it, love has no anchor. Attention is not simply about looking at someone when they speak. It is about seeing them when they're silent. It is not just listening to their words, but feeling the meaning underneath them. The kind of attention that fosters deep connection is not passive. It is deliberate, reverent, and disciplined. This kind of attention doesn't come naturally in a distracted world. It must be cultivated. In today's society, distraction has become our default state. Notifications interrupt our thoughts. Multitasking has become a badge of honor. Minds are fragmented, and presence is rare. Relationships suffer, not because love is absent, but because attention is. You cannot deeply love someone you are not truly present with. You cannot be fully present with someone while being partially occupied elsewhere. Half presence is full disconnection. And over time, that disconnection grows into emotional distance. People don't drift apart all at once. They drift inch by inch, moment by moment, in the silent erosion of attention. When you are with someone and they feel your undivided presence, something opens in them. It is a softening, a quiet recognition that they matter, that they are not just heard, but received, that they are not just seen, but felt. This is how trust grows, not in words, but in the quality of your attention. When your attention says, "I'm here, fully," the other person no longer feels the need to fight for space, to raise their voice, or to shrink into silence. They rest into the connection because they feel met. The discipline of attention is especially powerful in conflict. It's easy to pay attention when everything is peaceful and pleasant. But true relational strength is revealed in difficulty. When emotions rise, when misunderstandings occur, when the story in your mind wants to override what's being said, this is when the discipline of attention becomes a spiritual practice. To breathe, to still your mind, and to offer space instead of reaction is not weakness. It is mastery. A man named Omar shared the story of how he used to interrupt his partner during every disagreement. Not because he wanted to dominate her, but because he feared what might be said. His attention was always half, anchored in his own mental defenses, always preparing his next argument. It wasn't until he began practicing mindful listening that things changed. One day, instead of responding immediately, he simply breathed and stayed silent. His partner spoke, expecting interruption, but it didn't come. She softened. She cried. "I don't need you to fix it," she said. "I just need you to really hear me." That moment was a turning point. His presence gave her permission to be vulnerable, and her vulnerability deepened their bond. This kind of attention does not require intellect. It requires stillness. A quiet mind creates space for another's truth to land. You do not have to agree. You do not have to solve. You only have to be deeply present. In that presence, healing begins. From a neurological perspective, deep attention activates parts of the brain associated with empathy and attunement. Mirror neurons begin to reflect the other person's experience. You begin to feel with them, not just observe them. Emotional resonance forms, and it is this resonance, not problem solving, not advice, that creates intimacy. People want to be felt, not fixed. It is also important to understand that the way you direct your attention shapes the emotional climate of the relationship. If your attention is constantly focused on flaws, irritations, or unmet expectations, you begin to see the person through a lens of lack. Your brain reinforces what you consistently focus on. What you look for, you find. But if you discipline your attention toward appreciation, even in small things, the emotional atmosphere changes. You begin to see goodness. And when you see it, you mirror it. And when you mirror it, they feel it. There was a woman named Sophia who had been in a long-term marriage where love had become routine. She realized that she had been focusing on everything her partner wasn't doing. The ways he fell short, the things he didn't say, the gestures that used to be there but had faded. She decided, as a daily discipline, to write down one thing she appreciated about him each day. At first, it was difficult. Her mind was trained on complaint. But gradually, her lens shifted. She noticed his quiet patience, the way he refilled her car with gas without asking, the way he rubbed her back in silence when she was anxious. These weren't grand acts, but they were steady ones. As her attention shifted, so did her energy. And he, sensing this change, began to open more. Their conversations deepened, their connection revived. Not because anything external had changed, but because attention had. Attention is an act of love. And like love, it requires renewal. You cannot live off yesterday's connection. Just as the body needs food and rest, a relationship needs fresh attention. When you stop tending to it, even the most beautiful connection withers. The discipline of attention means choosing again and again to show up fully. Not out of obligation, but out of reverence for what you're building. This reverence extends to yourself as well. You cannot offer deep attention to others if you are disconnected from yourself. The way you listen to your own emotions, the way you honor your own needs, the way you speak to yourself in moments of failure, these are the templates you bring into relationship. If your internal dialogue is impatient, judgmental, or neglectful, it is likely your attention toward others will carry a similar flavor. Self-attention then becomes the training ground for relational presence. You learn to hold space for others by learning to hold space for yourself. This internal discipline also protects your relationships from the erosion of resentment. Resentment grows in the unattended spaces. When you are physically present but emotionally distant, when your partner speaks and your mind is elsewhere, when small gestures of connection go unnoticed. Attention is what keeps the emotional field clean. It catches the early signs of disconnection. It allows you to repair before rupture becomes too wide. It reminds you over and over to stay engaged not just with your partner, but with the moment itself. The moment is the only place where love lives, not in memory, not in fantasy, but right here. Attention is what opens the door to that moment. It is the willingness to say, right now, you are the most important thing in my world. That may not be said aloud, but it is always felt. And people remember how they are made to feel in your presence. Long after words fade, the memory of your attention remains. This is especially important during mundane moments. We often reserve our full attention for dramatic experiences, birthdays, arguments, reunions. But it is during the everyday, the dishes, the commute, the bedtime routine, that the real texture of a relationship is formed. If you can offer presence in the ordinary, love becomes extraordinary. The quality of your attention during the small moments determines the strength of your bond when big moments come. Attention also has a filtering effect. It teaches you what to respond to and what to let pass. Not every impulse deserves your energy. Not every comment requires your reaction. The discipline of attention gives you space between feeling and action. That space is where wisdom lives. It allows you to discern whether your partner's irritation is truly about you or about something unspoken. It allows you to listen beyond the content of their words to the emotion beneath. In that space, misunderstandings dissolve before they solidify. This kind of discernment is not always easy. It requires humility, the ability to not take things personally, the willingness to admit when you've misread a situation. But over time, this humility creates safety. It communicates, I care more about understanding you than defending myself. That message, felt consistently, becomes the bedrock of trust. Trust and attention are intimately linked. You trust those who are consistently present. You trust those who listen without agenda. You trust those who remember small details, not because they had to, but because they chose to. These acts of attention accumulate. They form a reservoir of goodwill, so that when storms arise, and they will, you have a foundation strong enough to weather them. There is a quiet power in knowing that your presence brings peace to someone else, that your attention is the anchor they can lean to when life feels uncertain, that your gaze holds them when words cannot. This power does not come from dominance, but from devotion. Devotion to the moment, devotion to truth, devotion to seeing, really seeing the person in front of you. This seeing becomes the medicine in a world where people feel increasingly invisible, drowned in noise, comparison, and constant movement. Your ability to be still, to be here, becomes a healing force. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be present over and over again. Attention, then, is not just a skill. It is a way of life, a way of moving through the world with reverence, a way of honoring connection, not through speech, but through silence, not through effort, but through presence. When you cultivate this discipline, your relationships begin to transform, not through force, not through control, but through the quiet power of being fully here, in this moment, offering yourself completely, not in pieces, not as a performance, but as a steady presence. And in that presence, love begins to remember itself. Love is never built on accident. It is drawn toward presence, cultivated through truth, and sustained by the depth of your inner alignment. People do not fall in love with your appearance, your achievements, or your words alone. They fall in love with how they feel in your presence, safe, seen, and subtly invited to grow. They fall in love with the energy you carry, the calm within your voice, and the way your eyes stay steady when they speak their truth. True connection does not need constant explanation. It thrives in silence, in patience, and in the quiet power of your stillness. If your inner world is at peace, your relationships reflect that harmony. If you are at war within, no amount of external beauty or charm will hold the bond together. The essence of love is not grasped through strategy or control. It is received through stillness, offered through authenticity, and deepened through disciplined attention. To be loved deeply, you must first become deeply known to yourself. To be met in love, you must meet yourself in truth. No one can do this for you. But once you do, the world begins to respond. People return to those whose energy feels like home, not because they are perfect, but because they are real, grounded, and present. And in that space, where nothing is forced and everything is clear, love becomes not a pursuit, but a reflection of who you are.